Are you an enterprise dissatisfied with overpriced analytics software that can't keep up with modern data? If so, then GravWell is the solution for you. GravWell is an unstructured data analytics platform for enterprises who demand total data visibility across their network. GravWell lets your security team go beyond the SIM and fuse data sources to correlate and answer questions you didn't know needed to be asked. Go to gravwell.io/securityweekly for an unlimited data trial and gain uncompromising visibility today. In 2017, an increasing number of companies reported they did not have effective insider threat detection methods. LogRhythm's UEBA solutions enable you to detect and neutralize user-based threats in real time, while built-in scenario and behavior-based analytics empower you to expose insider threats, compromised accounts, and privilege misuse. Visit LogRhythm.com to learn how their UEBA solutions can help you expand visibility and enhance detection capabilities. Today's determined attackers easily bypass even the most advanced network defenses. Trying to ramp up staff to detect their backdoors can cost thousands of dollars and take months, even years. With Active Countermeasures AI Hunter, we enable junior analysts to detect even the most advanced backdoors in a matter of hours. Sign up for a demo and purchase our product today by visiting activecountermeasures.com/ESW. Active Countermeasures. Make every analyst a hunter. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. Just a reminder, we're going to be at Mandalay Bay for Black Hat in the pool area recording a fun. We're coming up with all new trivia questions, so we're going to have a trivia-style interview series that we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing some sponsored interviews with select organizations, taking briefings. All that's happening in the pool area, so come check us out. We'll be at DEF CON, in the pool area at Caesars, recording shows, and in the vendor area selling stuff. And we are sponsoring a comic book that helps raise awareness about cybersecurity issues with Gary Berman, and he'll be there with us as well. Also, I'm told that you will be able to get I don't know if I can say it publicly yet, but you will be able to get these in the vendor area at Black Hat at a specific vendor. I don't know if I can say that. I don't know if that's official or not, but yeah. So, it's pretty awesome. Anyway, surprise! Technical segment with John Strand.
Tech segment, conversation. I'm going to keep this one real simple, Paul. I've been getting a lot of IANS calls on this. There's a bunch of corporations that are looking at traditional antivirus. They're looking at McAfee. They're looking at Symantec, Sophos. And the question is, whenever you're an organization that's trying to take the next step, do you rip and replace that with something like a Cylance, something like CrowdStrike? Or do you stick with the vendor that you currently have and then try to implement the technology that'll get you about 60, 70% of what that next generation endpoint security product gets you? There's no easy answer to this question. But I'd love to get your take on it because we have people asking all the time. And my answer has changed over the past 18 months, and I'd love to give your take. So is it all about being bleeding edge and having best of breed, but what about, having something currently integrated in your organization and keeping it moving forward for a period of time?
Yeah, the reason I think it's really hard is because there's so many different factors, John, that you have to take into consideration. I think a first thing that I would look at, like if I was the CISO and I walked in, I'd be like, what's our rip and replace cost? And if it's high, and that's a difficult, it's kind of arbitrary, right? I'd be like, all right, so how do we get that cost down first, right? I think operationally, I would want to be in a place that allows me to rip and replace security technology more easily, because that also speaks to my ability to do a whole lot of other things and manage my endpoints and my infrastructure effectively. That'd be my first question. How do I get those costs down? So if I do need to push something new or do a rip and replace, I can without too much headache. Now, the other kind of costs that are associated with that are the management and configuration and implementation, not just how do I remove what's on my endpoints and put something new out there. And, of course, that has to be taken in consideration. And then if I'm looking at a new solution, what's the benefit? Like what problems is it solving for me that my current technology isn't? Is it truly going to protect me in the future? And I think that's a difficult question to answer, and why so many people are struggling with it, again, is when they get to that point, it's like, does that really protect me against more things, less things, the same amount of things? I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know. And testing it is, thankfully, we have evolved, I think, as a community and an industry to doing a proper evaluation to figure out exactly how much better it's going to protect me. I still think there's a lot more work to be done there, but I think you have to make that. Yeah, that has to be included in the evaluation. Testing against the MITRE ATT&CK framework in a lot of different areas. I think in a lot of different methods is important too.
Now, and that's very similar to what I've been telling people, what's the cost of rip and replace? And it's not just the cost of replacing it, let's say for endpoint security. A lot of these different products will do additional services, like they'll do firewall management, they'll do data loss prevention. There's a lot of things that your traditional antivirus provider would have, like a Symantec or a McAfee or even a Microsoft. And so that's a huge note, right? It's not just an issue of, well, this is better. But there's going to be a whole bunch of compliance checkboxes, and we, no, security is not necessarily compliance. There's a lot of compliance checkboxes that these particular vendors can bring to the table. Also, when we're looking at moving forward over the next 3 years, or even 2 years, actually, these big vendors like McAfee and Symantec, they are starting to do the exact same types of things that Cylance or a CrowdStrike is actually doing. And you can basically keep your existing vendor, and you can implement those techniques on. Are they going to be as good? No, probably not. But is it going to be good enough? Is it going to be 70%, 80%? Yeah, possibly. And when you're looking at Microsoft, I mean, their marketing strategy for advanced threat protection is great. They're basically saying, hey, Windows Defender, you already are running it on your computer system. It's not like you have to install another agent on your computer system. And I think that is an outstanding sales message. So for a large number of my customers, and I'll talk about the customers I don't give this message to, I basically say stay where you're at. See how you can implement additional security technologies like, let's say, user behavioral and entity analytics, turning on the host-based firewall to stop east-to-west communication in your organization, doing those types of things before trying to move to a next generation endpoint security product. That probably isn't going to protect you as much as you think it does. Now, there are customers where budget is not a question. And whenever we get into those customers, they say budget is not a question. We want best of breed. Well, that's a horse of a completely different color. Yeah, you would want those bleeding edge technologies, but it's going to require an additional level of staff to actually keep them up to date, keep them tuned, and make them work properly. So it's a very complicated question. And I think it's important we talk about it on the show, because on regular Security Weekly, we do talk about products, but not nearly as much as we do here. But these are the types of questions that a lot of organizations do not ask themselves. You talk about the problem to solve. I think that that's a viable question to ask. But then the rip and replace cost. There is a true rip and replace cost. It is not something that's going to be seamless in your organization at all.
Yeah, I think that the decision is made easier to purchase anything when it can do a couple things, like solve multiple problems for you. Right? Mm-hmm. So you're not just like, well, maybe my contract's expired, or, like I want better protection. But the new solution, where I find I will move not just with a security solution, but really any solution, is if it solves multiple problems for me. So if it can come in, give me better visibility into this area that I didn't have before, if it can integrate more easily with other technologies that I have, that's a huge win. So I think that you can justify rip and replace better when, first of all, it's going to solve more than one problem for you that you currently have. The second thing is that makes the decision a lot easier is if it reduces my spend on other technologies. If it does things in protection, that means I don't have to put a lot of my budget into an email phishing, protection solution. Maybe I can use the one I already have, and I don't have to worry about it as much. It's probably a bad example, but you know what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah,
If it increases the value of your other solutions, or allows you to not have to spend as much on your other solutions, then you can, start justifying that as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I'm glad we spent some time on that, John. I think it's also kind of interesting, just to kind of end this note, that I don't know if you saw the news article that was running, and I think Krebs ran with the story that Google, in its 85,000 plus employees, claims to not have a successful phishing campaign because they've used two-factor authentication. I cringe when I read that. I mean, first of all, good for Google for deploying a two-factor authentication for all 85,000 employees. That's awesome. But there's just so many more details there that deserve attention. If you do that, like let's say you're looking at that and going, well, I'm going to stay with my current, AV solution because I'm going to stem off phishing by having this two-factor thing. I think you have to ask yourself, like, if you're not Google, does that work for you, right? Because I also think that there's a certain culture at Google. There's likely other protections they're not telling you about that are in place that led to that conclusion? And how can you draw that conclusion with 85,000 people? I mean, maybe Google's got some awesome security technology that nobody else knows about that lets them be 100% confident that they haven't had a successful attack. However, every other organization in the world should realize that if you didn't see the attack, how do you know that you didn't have an attack?
And that was very frustrating. That was one of those things that came across BHIS, went to all of our testers. And there was some frustration because we have actually entire toolkits created with Cred Sniper, Cred King, Mail Sniper, well, in particular Cred Sniper, that is specifically designed for bypassing U2FA.
Oh, yeah.
And bypassing
We've talked about that on webcast. We've talked about it on the show. In fact, we talked about it with multiple, not just your organization, John, at BHIS, but also with Javelin. So we've covered that as well.
It's kind of hard to see that. And we're like, hey, yeah, it's possible. And I don't have a problem with it, not being discussed. But one of the problems I do have is that organizations will start saying, well, U2FA across the board is the panacea of all of our attacks. And it's not, it isn't. It's part of that overall architecture. We keep talking about problems to solve, right? Again and again and again. I think by and large, a lot of the problems have solutions. It's just now we're getting into conversations of, does this solve that problem better? And that much better does it actually make you want to spend money on it? And I would argue without question that 2FA and U2FA, it solves a tremendous number of security problems, but it doesn't solve it 100%. And that's one of the concerns I have with articles like that.
Yeah.
But what the hell, job security moving forward?
Because, AV is only going to get you so far. Next generation endpoint protection is going to get you so far. Where I like the two-factor are specific use cases that I've read, such as there was I think it was a journalist or someone owned like a really short Twitter handle, and they were specifically targeted, and they took over, their accounts. They demanded a ransom, the whole thing, to get that. In that case, a two-factor authentication really helps you stem off some of those attacks. Even additional passcodes, like in this case, they hijacked their SIM card because they were T-Mobile and didn't have protections on their account. So they're able to take over their SIM card, which was being used, by the way, as a two-factor. So a physical two-factor token absolutely has some really awesome benefits. But I think just some of the use cases are not protecting 85,000 employees from any kind of attack, right? It's more protecting that individual user because they have an asset that an attacker is specifically going after. It's a totally different use case than protecting an organization the size of Google.
Yep.
All right, with that, we're going to take a short break, come back, and quickly run through the few enterprise security news stories that we have this week. Stay tuned.